The first time I truly understood what I meant to my family wasn't during an argument or a holiday dinner. It happened while I lay in a hospital bed with oxygen tubing under my nose, wondering if I would survive the night. I called my parents 9 times. 9 times. Every call rang until voicemail answered. Later, I discovered why. My younger sister had just bought a new house, and my parents were helping her move furniture. They had spent the afternoon carrying couches, unpacking boxes, ordering pizza, and posting smiling family photos online while I lay in intensive care with a blood clot blocking my lung. That was the day I stopped begging people to choose me. Instead, I called my attorney. By the time my family finally decided to visit, my future and theirs had already changed forever. If you've ever been the dependable child, the one everyone leaned on but nobody ever checked on, this story may feel painfully familiar. My name is Lauren Bennett. I'm 36 years old, and I own a home healthcare agency outside Columbus, Ohio. Every day, my company sends compassionate caregivers into homes to help elderly people who can no longer take care of themselves. My employees sit beside frightened patients, comfort lonely widows, prepare meals, organize medications, and remind people that they still matter. I built that company from absolutely nothing. One client, one used minivan, one exhausted woman willing to work 16-hour days because failure wasn't an option. 14 years later, my agency employed more than 40 caregivers and served hundreds of families. Ironically, I spent my life making sure strangers never felt abandoned. I simply never imagined my own family would abandon me when I needed them most. Looking back now, there were warning signs. For several weeks, I'd been unusually tired. Walking upstairs left me breathless. My left calf ached constantly, but I blamed long hours and stress. Owning a business meant there was always another problem waiting for my attention. Another employee needing guidance, another family counting on me. Taking care of myself always came last. Eventually, my physician examined my swollen leg and frowned. "I don't want to alarm you," he said carefully, "but I want to rule out a blood clot." The words barely registered. He scheduled additional tests, warned me to watch for chest pain or sudden shortness of breath, and reminded me not to ignore any worsening symptoms. I thanked him. Then I went straight back to work, because that's what I'd always done. My mother had spent my entire childhood calling me the dependable one. At 8 years old, it meant helping clean the kitchen while my little sister played outside. At 12, it meant babysitting. At 16, it meant getting a job because you're mature enough. At 25, it meant paying bills whenever my parents came up short. By 36, dependable had quietly become everyone's excuse for never worrying about me. Lauren will handle it. Lauren is strong. Lauren never complains. Lauren will figure something out. Those words sounded like compliments. In reality, they were permission for everyone else to stop showing up. What almost nobody knew was just how much of my family rested on my shoulders. Every month, I quietly paid a large portion of my parents' retirement community expenses. They believed they could afford their comfortable apartment because Dad's pension and Social Security were stretching farther than expected. They never realized the missing piece came from my checking account. I never corrected them. I had also named both of my parents as the primary beneficiaries of my life insurance policy. If something happened to me, I wanted them protected. I wanted them comfortable. Most recently, I had promised to help my younger sister, Emily, purchase her first home. Emily and her husband, Ryan, couldn't quite afford the required down payment. I could, so I offered. Not because anyone demanded it, because that's what I believed family did. I didn't expect praise. I only wanted the people I loved to feel safe. Somewhere along the way, I confused being useful with being loved. Only 1 week before everything happened, I'd mentioned during a phone call that my doctor wanted additional testing. "I'm just feeling worn out," I admitted. Mom barely paused. "Oh, honey," she laughed warmly. "You're the strongest one in the family. You'll be fine." "You always are." She immediately changed the subject to Emily's new house. At the time, I smiled. Now I understand what those words really meant. You'll be fine. Translation? I don't have to worry about you. Friday morning began like every other workday. Coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other, I was reorganizing weekend caregiver schedules when the room suddenly tilted sideways. Not dizziness, something far worse. The air simply disappeared. I tried inhaling again. Nothing. It felt as though someone had wrapped heavy plastic around my lungs. My chest exploded with pain. The coffee slipped from my hand, shattered across the office floor, and suddenly everyone was shouting. I remember seeing my office manager, Diane, rushing toward me. She had worked beside me since the earliest days of the business. She didn't waste a second. Before I even collapsed, she was already dialing 911. I slid against a filing cabinet until I hit the floor. The tile felt strangely cold against my cheek. Somewhere above me, Diane calmly answered questions from the dispatcher. 36 years old? Difficulty breathing. Chest pain. Possible pulmonary embolism. Everything sounded distant. Like I was underwater. Paramedics arrived within minutes. An oxygen mask covered my face. Someone squeezed my hand. Another voice kept asking me simple questions. I tried answering. I couldn't find enough breath to speak. Inside the ambulance, with sirens screaming around me, one terrifying thought settled into my mind. I might not survive today. I wasn't thinking about my company, or my house, or my bank account. I thought about my family. Surely Mom would come. Surely Dad would leave whatever he was doing. Surely Emily would rush to the hospital. Families did that, didn't they? The emergency department moved frighteningly fast. CT scans, blood draws, IV lines, doctors speaking urgently. Within an hour, I was admitted directly into intensive care. A pulmonologist stood beside my bed and explained everything without softening the truth. The clot that had formed in my leg had broken loose. It had traveled into my lung. It was large, very dangerous. The next 48 hours would determine everything. Medication had already begun, but there were no guarantees. Then she gently said something that seemed perfectly ordinary. "You should call your family." I nodded. Of course. I reached for my phone. My hands trembled. Mom answered almost every call I made. Surely she'd answer this one. 4 rings. Voicemail. I left a message. "Mom, it's Lauren. I'm in St. Mary's ICU. They found a blood clot in my lung. It's serious. Please call me." 10 minutes passed. Nothing. I called Dad. Voicemail. I left the same message. Another 15 minutes. Silence. I convinced myself they were driving. Maybe shopping. Maybe their phones were charging. I waited. Then I called again. And again. By late afternoon, I'd called 9 separate times. Not one answer. Not one return call. Then I made the mistake that broke my heart. I opened our family group chat. There they were. Fresh photos uploaded only minutes earlier. Emily smiling inside her beautiful new living room. Dad carrying one side of an oversized sectional couch. Mom proudly arranging dishes inside the kitchen cabinets. Someone had ordered pizza. Everyone looked happy. Mom had written, "So proud of our girl. Her beautiful new home is finally coming together. Feeling incredibly blessed today. Blessed." I stared at those pictures until my vision blurred. My messages sat unread beneath them. My voicemail notifications apparently meant less than unpacking a dining room. The daughter lying in intensive care ranked below a sofa. I placed my phone face down. For the first time since entering the hospital, I stopped hoping. An hour later, the phone buzzed. Hope returned anyway. Emily, finally. I opened her text. "OMG, busy helping finish the move today. Glad the hospital is taking good care of you. Rest up." That was it. No questions. No concern. "No, I'm coming." Just a heart emoji. I reread the message 3 times. Then something inside me quietly changed. Not anger. Clarity. If strangers were doing everything possible to keep me alive while my own family couldn't spare 15 minutes, perhaps I'd misunderstood our relationships all along. There was one person left to call. My younger brother, Noah. Noah was 30, taught woodworking at a local high school, and somehow had escaped the unhealthy roles the rest of us had accepted. He wasn't Mom's favorite. He wasn't expected to solve everyone's problems. He simply possessed something rare. Kindness. I hesitated before dialing. He answered on the second ring. "Lauren?" My voice cracked. I'm in the hospital, he interrupted immediately. Which hospital? St. Mary's. I'm leaving now. He didn't ask whether it was serious. He didn't ask if it could wait until after work. He didn't ask who else was there. He simply came. 40 minutes later, Noah rushed through my hospital, door still wearing dusty work boots and a flannel shirt, sprinkled with sawdust. His face turned white the instant he saw me connected to oxygen. Without saying another word, he crossed the room, took both my hands and whispered, "I'm here." 4 simple words. I broke down crying, not because I feared dying anymore, because for the first time in my adult life, someone had chosen me first. Noah stayed. He called his principal, arranged substitute coverage, spent the night sleeping upright in the world's most uncomfortable hospital chair. Every time nurses entered, he woke immediately. Every medication, every blood draw, every doctor, he never complained. By the second morning, my oxygen levels had improved. The medication was working. The immediate danger had begun to pass. While Noah slept beside my bed after another sleepless night, I quietly reviewed my entire life. The retirement payments, the insurance policy, Emily's house fund, years of financial support, years of emotional effort, years spent proving my love through sacrifice. Then I compared that ledger with one simple fact. 9 unanswered phone calls, one brother who came immediately. Everything suddenly balanced. Not emotionally, mathematically. I had spent years investing in people who disappeared the moment I needed them. Meanwhile, the one person, asking for nothing, had shown me exactly what family actually looked like. As sunlight spilled through the hospital window that morning, I made the most important decision of my life. I wasn't going to punish anyone. I was simply going to stop rewarding people who had mistaken my generosity for obligation. I reached for my phone. This time I didn't call my parents. I called my attorney. The call connected on the second ring. "Lauren?" My attorney, Daniel Harper, answered in his usual calm voice. "Daniel, I'm in the hospital." His tone changed instantly. "What happened?" I briefly explained everything. The pulmonary embolism, the ICU, the doctors, the 9 unanswered phone calls, my parents helping Emily move instead of checking on me, and finally the text message that simply said, "Glad you're being looked after." He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was silence for several seconds. Finally, he asked the question I expected. "What would you like me to do?" "I want to update everything." "What do you mean by everything?" "My will, my life insurance, my financial power of attorney, the retirement payments for my parents, and the money I promised Emily for her house." Another pause followed. Then Daniel spoke carefully. "Lauren, before I prepare those documents, I need to ask you something, not only as your attorney, but as your friend." I waited. "Are you making a permanent decision because you've gained clarity or because you're hurting?" It was exactly why I'd trusted him for nearly a decade. He never simply agreed. He made sure I understood the weight of my choices. "I've asked myself the same question all night," I answered honestly. "If my family had shown up yesterday, I wouldn't be making this call." "I know. But they didn't. I called 9 times. They ignored everyone. I spent 36 years believing I mattered to them more than what I could provide. Yesterday answered that question. This isn't revenge. I'm finally accepting the truth." Daniel sighed quietly. "I'll be there within the hour." After hanging up, I asked to speak with my attending physician. Dr. Michelle Carter entered my room a few minutes later carrying a tablet. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. I need a favor." She listened patiently as I explained what I intended to do. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "You want documentation that you're mentally competent to make legal decisions." "Exactly. I know how these situations can become after someone changes estate documents." She smiled gently. "You're thinking ahead. I own a business. I always think ahead." Dr. Carter reviewed my chart. "Your oxygen levels are stable. Your medications aren't affecting your judgment. You're fully alert. I'll document that you have complete decision-making capacity. If your attorney needs me to witness anything, I'm willing." Relief washed over me. "Thank you." The nurse assigned to me that morning overheard our conversation. Her name was Angela. She'd spent 2 days quietly taking excellent care of me. "If you need another witness," she said, "I'd be happy to help." I smiled. "I appreciate that more than you know." Less than an hour later, Daniel arrived carrying a leather briefcase. He greeted Noah first. The two men shook hands before Daniel sat beside my bed. "I prepared everything." He spread the documents across the rolling hospital table. One by one, he explained each page. The first document removed my parents as beneficiaries of my life insurance policy. Instead, the policy would be divided between Noah and a caregiver assistance foundation I had dreamed of creating for years. Many of my employees struggled financially while caring for others. If anything ever happened to me, I wanted part of my estate to help people like them. The second document completely replaced my existing will. Again, Noah became my primary heir. The charitable fund received another substantial portion. My parents and Emily were removed entirely. The third document stopped the automatic monthly payments covering my parents' retirement community expenses. They would receive written notice before the next payment was due. The fourth document withdrew the money promised for Emily's house. Fortunately, the wire transfer hadn't been finalized yet. The funds could still be recalled. Daniel looked at me one last time. "Are you absolutely certain?" I glanced toward Noah. He hadn't asked about the documents. He hadn't tried to change my mind. He simply sat quietly nearby because he trusted me. "I've never been more certain." Dr. Carter entered the room. Angela followed. Daniel reviewed every page aloud while both women watched carefully. I signed each document slowly. No hesitation. No trembling. Only peace. Each signature felt lighter than the one before it. For years I had confused generosity with obligation. Now I was simply correcting the records. When the final page was notarized, Daniel closed his briefcase. "It's done. No one can claim you weren't mentally competent. Everything was properly witnessed. It's legally solid." I leaned back against my pillow and exhaled. I finally gave my future to the people who actually showed up. Angela quietly squeezed my shoulder. "I wish more people learned that lesson before it was too late." Daniel left shortly afterward. Noah returned with coffee and sandwiches. He noticed the empty document folders but didn't ask questions. Instead, he handed me lunch. "You should eat." I laughed softly. "You know, you're terrible at dramatic conversations." He grinned. "I figured if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me." That simple respect nearly brought me to tears again. Over the next 2 days, my condition continued improving. I was transferred from intensive care to a regular room. Doctors began discussing discharge plans. Meanwhile, my family remained silent. Not one phone call. Not one visit. Not one apology. Oddly enough, their silence no longer hurt. It confirmed everything. On Monday morning, my business accountant called. The bank confirmed the transfer cancellation. So Emily's down payment has officially been withdrawn. I thanked her. About 2 hours later, Noah's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Ryan's name, Emily's husband. Noah answered and immediately placed the call on speaker. "Hey, Noah," Ryan said nervously. "Do you know what's going on?" "What do you mean?" "The bank says Lauren's money never arrived. Our closing is falling apart. The sellers are threatening to cancel. Is there some mistake?" Noah glanced at me. "I don't know anything about Lauren's finances." "You should probably ask Lauren." A long pause. "Oh, right. The hospital." His voice carried mild annoyance rather than concern, as though my illness had become an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Ryan continued, "Can you at least ask her what's happening? I'm sure there's an explanation." "There is," Noah replied calmly, "but I think she should explain it herself." The call ended. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, Noah shook his head. "They still don't get it." "No, they don't." That evening, my phone rang again. Emily. For one brief second, I allowed myself hope. Maybe she'd realized how badly she'd failed me. Maybe she wanted to apologize. I answered. "Lauren?" "Yes." "So, the bank says the down payment disappeared. My account is frozen until this gets sorted out." Ryan's freaking out. "Did something happen with your money?" "Not." "How are you feeling?" "Not." "I'm sorry." "Not." I should have been there. Only money. Only the house. Only what affected her. I closed my eyes. Emily, I called Mom and Dad 9 times from intensive care. You texted me a heart emoji. Silence. Then, what does that have to do with the house? The question stunned me. Not because she was being cruel, because she genuinely didn't understand the connection. In her mind, my health and my financial support existed in completely separate categories. One mattered, the other didn't. It has everything to do with the house. I don't understand. I know. If you want to discuss it, come see me. I'm still in the hospital. You know exactly where I am. She didn't answer. The call ended. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with incoming calls. Mom? Again. 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 Voicemail after voicemail. The same woman who ignored 9 desperate calls now couldn't stop dialing. I watched the screen light up over and over. Then I turned the phone face down. Not to punish her, because I already knew how the conversation would go. She would explain, minimize, deflect, convince me I misunderstood. By the end of the call, I'd somehow apologize for hurting her feelings. Not this time. If she wanted to talk, she could come to the hospital, face to face, with witnesses, with paperwork, with nowhere to rewrite history. Later that evening, Dad called. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Lauren, I just found out everything. A long silence. Is it true you called us 9 times? Yes. His breathing became shaky. My phone was in my pocket all day. I felt it vibrating. I thought it was the moving company. Your mother kept saying, "Finish helping Emily first." I listened. Then, my father cried. I'd seen him cry twice in my entire life. I almost lost my daughter, and I was carrying a couch. I didn't rush to comfort him. For once, I allowed silence to exist. Finally, I spoke. I'm going to recover, but things won't ever be the same. I know. I deserve that. Another pause. I'll be there tomorrow, whether your mother comes or not. After we hung up, Noah looked at me. Think they'll actually come? I nodded slowly. Yes, but not because I was sick. They're coming because the money stopped. Still, I wanted them there. Not for revenge, for truth. That night, Daniel returned carrying copies of every legal document I'd signed. He placed them neatly inside a folder. Before leaving, he offered one final piece of advice. Tomorrow, your mother will try to turn this into an argument. Don't argue. Truth doesn't need volume. Let the paperwork speak. I smiled. I think for the first time in my life, I'm finally ready to let it. The next morning, the room was quiet. Sunlight poured through the hospital window as nurses checked my medications, one last time before breakfast. Noah sat beside me reading a magazine he clearly wasn't interested in, while Daniel stood near the window carrying a slim folder that held copies of every document I had signed. Everything was finished. Everything was legal. Everything was final. All that remained was the conversation my family had avoided for nearly a week. Around 10 o'clock, I heard footsteps in the hallway. A moment later, the door opened. My mother walked in first, carrying a bouquet of bright yellow flowers, smiling as though she were visiting someone recovering from a routine flu instead of someone who had nearly died. Behind her came my father. He looked exhausted. Emily followed, her face tense with worry, while her husband Ryan stayed close behind. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Mom walked over and kissed my forehead. "Oh, sweetheart," she said cheerfully. "You really scared us." I looked at her quietly. She continued without noticing. "But I knew you'd pull through. You're the strongest one in this family." There it was. The sentence I'd heard my entire life. The sentence that had excused every absence. The sentence that meant, "You don't need us." Before I could answer, she glanced toward Emily. "So," she said lightly, "Emily told me there's been some confusion with the bank. I'm sure it's all just a misunderstanding. We'll get everything straightened out. Not, 'How are you feeling?' Not, 'We're sorry.' Not, 'We should have been here.' Straight to the money." Daniel quietly stepped forward and placed the folder on my hospital tray. I gently moved the flowers aside. Then I looked directly at my family. There isn't any misunderstanding. The smiles disappeared. I asked Daniel to come here 3 days ago. I updated my will. I changed my life insurance. I stopped paying for your retirement community. And I withdrew the money for Emily's house. The room became perfectly silent. Mom stared at me as though she hadn't heard correctly. What? I changed everything. Emily's face turned pale. You what? I removed every financial commitment I had made. Ryan looked stunned. Dad lowered his eyes. Mom laughed nervously. Oh, don't be ridiculous. You're upset. We'll talk about this after you're home. Daniel calmly opened the folder. I'm afraid Ms. Bennett's decisions have already been completed. He slid copies across the table. Each document was signed while Ms. Bennett was fully competent. Witnessed by both her physician and her attending nurse. Properly notarized. Legally filed. They are fully enforceable. Mom's smile vanished. You let her do this? Daniel answered calmly. I followed my client's lawful instructions. Mom looked back at me. You made these decisions from a hospital bed? Yes. What kind of daughter does something like that? I met her eyes. The kind who called her parents 9 times while she couldn't breathe. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. It wasn't like that. I didn't know it was serious. You left messages. You thought moving furniture mattered more. No, I thought you were being checked out. I thought you'd be fine. I nodded slowly. I know. That's always what you thought. You always believed I'd be fine. So you never came. Dad suddenly spoke. She's telling the truth. Everyone turned toward him. He looked at my mother. We ignored the calls. I ignored the calls. My phone was in my pocket. I chose the couch. I chose wrong. The room fell silent again. Emily looked back and forth between us. Finally, she whispered, So, you're really taking away my house? I shook my head. No, I'm simply no longer buying it. There's a difference. Tears filled her eyes. But you promised. I did? And you promised to be my sister. She looked confused. I texted you. You sent a heart emoji. I almost died. Emily covered her face. For the first time since entering the room, she cried. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. No, I answered gently. You didn't try to. Ryan quietly reached for her hand. He looked embarrassed. I should have come too. You barely knew me, I replied kindly. My own family did. Mom remained standing. Her arms crossed tightly. This is completely unreasonable. Families make mistakes. You don't destroy people's lives over one bad weekend. I took a slow breath. This wasn't one weekend. It was 36 years. 36 years of being the dependable daughter. The one who paid. The one who fixed problems. The one nobody ever checked on. I nearly died before anyone realized I was missing. You called me strong, so you never had to show up. The words hung in the air. Nobody answered. Even Mom couldn't. Daniel quietly gathered the papers together again. The legal matters are settled. Whether anyone agrees with them doesn't change them. For several long moments, only the steady beeping of my heart monitor filled the room. Finally, Dad stood. He walked over beside my bed. Then, in front of everyone, he took my hand. I failed you. I should have come. I should have answered. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to hear me say it. I squeezed his hand. I appreciate that. Mom looked at him in disbelief. So you're just accepting this? He turned toward her. What else can I do? Our daughter almost died. I carried a couch. I'm done pretending those things are equal. His voice cracked. I almost buried my little girl. That finally broke something inside Mom. She looked around the room. At me. At Noah. At Dad. At Daniel. At the documents. There was nowhere left to hide. No version of events where she was the victim. No explanation that erased 9 unanswered calls. After what felt like forever, she quietly whispered, I should have come. 3 simple words. Not perfect. Not enough to erase years, but true. For the first time in my life. True. I smiled softly. Thank you. No dramatic hugs followed. No miraculous healing. Some wounds don't close that quickly, but something changed. Honesty had finally entered a family that had spent decades avoiding it. Before they left, I surprised everyone. "I'm willing to help with your retirement expenses again." Mom looked up, but only under two conditions. Daniel handed her a single page. "The first condition," I said, "is that we never pretend this week didn't happen. No rewriting history. No excuses. The second, if you want me in your life, you have to show up in mine. When I'm healthy. When I'm struggling. When there's nothing to gain. I don't need money from any of you. I need effort." Dad signed immediately. "Without hesitation, I can do that." Mom stared at the page for nearly a minute before finally signing as well. Emily looked at me through tears. "I'll earn back your trust." "I know it won't happen today." "But I'll earn it." I nodded. "I hope you do." Several weeks later, I finally returned home. Recovery wasn't quick. Blood thinners became part of my daily routine. Physical therapy helped rebuild my strength. My company continued running, thanks to the incredible employees who had refused to let everything collapse while I was gone. Noah visited almost every weekend. Not because he needed something, because he wanted to. Dad called every Sunday evening. Sometimes we talked for an hour, sometimes only 10 minutes, but he never missed a week. Mom struggled the most. Old habits don't disappear overnight. She occasionally slipped back into making excuses or avoiding difficult conversations. But every single time, she corrected herself. Slowly. Imperfectly. Honestly. Emily and Ryan eventually purchased a smaller home they could truly afford on their own. Years later, she admitted it became one of the best things that ever happened to them, because it forced them to build a life without depending on someone else's generosity. As for me, I created the Caregiver Assistance Foundation I'd dreamed about. It now provides emergency financial support to healthcare workers facing family crises, medical emergencies, or unexpected hardships. The people who spend their lives caring for others finally have someone caring for them too. Looking back, I don't believe surviving the blood clot was the greatest miracle. The miracle was discovering who loved me when I had nothing left to offer except my presence. That lesson changed every relationship in my life. Because family isn't measured by shared blood. It isn't measured by holiday dinners or social media, photos or promises made when life is easy. Family is measured by who walks through the hospital door when the machines are beeping, before they know whether there's anything waiting for them on the other side. If someone has shown up for you during your darkest moment, hold on to them. They're your real family. And if you've spent your whole life being the strong one, carrying everyone else's burdens while quietly ignoring your own, remember this: being strong doesn't mean carrying everyone forever. Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is stop carrying the people who never noticed the weight you were holding. The day I stopped begging to be chosen was the day I finally found the people who had been choosing me all along.